What even is video? I'm now to the point that I'm going through thousands of videotapes, both within themes and personal collections, and also just a little pile that people have given me. And I'm starting to see trends and themes and what exactly we decided was going to go onto videotape for later generations. The later generations are here, and they have some questions. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, a podcast about technology, history, and getting myself out of debt. Thanks to Jeff Atwood, Daniel Boyd, and the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. For a long time, these VHS tapes in my presence were really intimidating. Massive piles of black squares with all sorts of weird labels, some of them handwritten, some of them professionally printed, and all of them in real time, requiring me to put them into a machine, make sure all the settings were right, run them all the way to the end, edit out the beginnings and the ends so it was just the content, and then put them on the Internet Archive or hand them off to the people who requested I do it. And after a while, I started to really get into the sense of what's out there and what I'm being given. So let's talk about that. Naturally, there's an entire range of commercial videotapes. Straight up, here's E.T., here's Star Trek, here is some movie that came out in 1988 and it was on videotape, and you could either rent it down at the rental place or you could buy it and take it home forever. In both cases, it was a certain cut, and it was always in 4:3 standard definition, and it would represent in some way some amalgam of the original cinematic work. Very occasionally, those versions would be versions of different edits or different soundtracks. Some of them used pan and scan or weird widescreen hacks to be able to be shown on regular televisions, but on the whole, these were just the versions of the movies, which later came out on DVD and Blu-ray and streaming, that could be turned into some sort of preserved version, but more often than not, they turn out to just be a kind of crappier version of what we already continue to have. And making them look like they used to on VHS, frankly, that's a plug-in. Then there are videotapes that are of personal meaning. Recordings done with some sort of camera and recording family events or events you went to. Maybe even commercial events like state fairs or concerts, recorded by an individual for the purposes of later reference or just capturing the moment in some way. I have a hugely strong memory of the first time that I paid way too much money for a bootleg of a Roger Waters concert I went to in 1987. And in that video, when it came on, I know my face dropped when I realized that I was looking at an incredibly blurry image of the band and the singer, taken from the nosebleed seats of Madison Square Garden, a white, shifting, shaking dot, and where they would slowly zoom in the lens to get an even more shaky image of the band performing. With the music echoing throughout Madison Square Garden, almost indiscernible in a muddy heap of audio. Still, there's something kind of fun and joyous about the fact that somebody went to that much effort to then make a really crappy version of the concert available. For me, it helped me remember what it was like to go there, even if in no way did it match up to the actual experience. These personal videos, home videos and concert videos, are in many ways both valuable and valueless. People in the shots are people you may not know, but it may represent a recording of an experience in the background or just everybody being together a certain way that would have meaning historically. Shots of people in a place we don't have much record of what people were like who were living there. Shots of family units doing things together that show how we played games, how we conversed in the 1980s and 1990s that later may not be as easy to find. And there's even a subset of that where people, knowing that they are on camera, put on little performances, aim the camera at a family member, ask them a few questions, and we suddenly hear from them a personal history or a personal recollection being saved for posterity, even if that posterity is as crappy as a VHS tape. And that's precious on its own. Clearly, our technology is going to get better and better at processing through these tapes at very high speed, picking out the subject matter, summarizing it, and presenting it back. So if you want to look for where people discussed a certain subject, being able to go almost immediately to that clip makes the world a little bit better for research and understanding. And there's a third area that I've been finding on these tapes: recorded television. Just straight up, something's on television, people press record, they get to the end of the show, the event, the segment, and then they stop. There's no metadata. There's no real sense of it being a specific piece of work. It's just dipping their hands into the stream of video, pulling things out of them, compiling them into a little snowball, a packed piece of different parts of television that went by, and then giving it usually a very poor label and putting it away on the shelf until, through a bunch of different funny coincidences, it ends up in my office being digitized. Those moments are, in their own way, surprisingly rare. The amount of television that went by, you would think, would represent a case of being able to see everything and seeing it all whenever you want to, and that anything of value surely has been kept around. A really good example are television shows that ran during odd parts of the year. When they had paid for the pilot, paid for a few episodes to be made, they needed to fill up a little bit of the schedule, and for a couple weeks, we saw a number of interesting episodes of a show that then faded into nothingness. If there's some part of you that thinks of television as immutable or a part of the canon, it is surprisingly not. It is surprising to me how many different channels were running very different local programming, different shows, and then the records of them not being kept very well or stored away in closets and storage units to be discovered maybe many years later, but perhaps not. A lot of the most precious things that I've been able to find just represent one person's gathering of professional work with a production company they worked with. I mean, these are artists and actual creators who put together music videos and shows and concerts, probably with a dream that these would have a life beyond the day that they were making them. And there's a very good chance that up to 40 years went by before I just happened to wander into them. Through all of this work, all of this video intake, what used to be incredibly daunting, the idea of a full video signal being recorded 24/7, is now surprisingly doable. If you accept the crucible of lossy compression that will look good to the human eye, but may require some effort to rebuild later, you can actually save a lot of video very, very efficiently. I wouldn't be somebody who would want something that was one of a kind in every sense of the word to be saved this way, and I've certainly made it an effort to save things as robustly as I can. But at some point, you are making value judgments. If I'm facing down 1,000 hours of video, of television, perhaps it's fine that it is full resolution, but is only a few hundred megabytes and requiring a lot of processing to be viewed, then hoping that I can drag together half a petabyte of disk space to get every last flickering magnetic signal. It's a debate. An ongoing debate. There is no central rule I have to follow. Do I treat this particular fan sub of Dragon Ball Z with the same reverence of a one-of-a-kind recording of a concert of a musician who died a year or two later? Do I look at nightclub footage, shaky and broken and with all these different sounds going on, with the same amount of effort and preservation-minded thinking that I do for a discovered, never-seen-before television pilot episode recovered from a storage unit? On the whole, I have decided that I will do my best at every turn, that I will never throw out the originals, that I will never put people in a position of thinking that giving me something means the end of it, and to see what the world will do with what's there so far, and use that feedback to make what we have online accessible, as widely experienced as possible. It's a heck of a promise, but maybe somewhere in there, as we look at shaky cam, fuzz out, broken tapes, and odd shots, we'll see reflecting back at us who we actually are. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, thanks to James Bekoyanu, Mark Pilgrim, Ernie Hershey, Michael Rubin, Craig Talbert, Dilip Reddy, Sean Kelly, Trixie the Cat, Martin, Symbionts, and Anonymous, along with the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who are supporting me and helping me get out of debt. As of this recording, I have one debt outstanding. I was feeling a little poor. I went to the hospital. They told me they couldn't look at me the first day. I had to stay over for a day and a half through the weekend. And then they ran all of the heart tests on me Monday and discovered nothing. I got a bunch of wonderful tests on every level. They really over-tested me. And I've got those for a spreadsheet, and that's valuable. But with my health insurance and with everything else involved, well, they still want $2,000. That kind of situation just pops up out of nowhere. And I'll say that it would have been something that really bothered me years ago. And now it's a minor, annoying speed bump. It really takes so much stress off of me to feel that I can go to the hospital and deal with the bill because of work like this and your support. Thank you so much.